Thank you for coming into this session. You might say, hey, hang on, there were 450 people in this room earlier. Where have they all gone? I think what's happened is everyone is so pleased to be out in the world, meeting people, talking, that it's really difficult to persuade them to come in to here and sit down. But in here, we are going to meet and talk. Please come this way. I'm about to ask people to get together in groups. So this session has been designed to get people together to start talking about the challenges we face and try to find solutions for them together. Okay? So nobody's going to be forced to speak in front of anybody else. Don't worry about that. But the aim is to get people to share thoughts together in groups. We've got 23 people roughly, 24 maybe, so I think we've got space probably for 4 groups of 6. All right? So your first task is to gather together into a group of about 6 or 7 people in chairs that are closer together than you are at the moment, Alfred. So you need to go and sit closer to somebody. Oh, well, that's very sweet of you. But I'm going to be wandering around here. So let's first of all, let's form ourselves into groups. You're going to have to walk across the aisle here. That's a good thing about these chairs. You can move them around, yeah. Look at this, self-organizing groups, it's brilliant. Okay. Okay, I think we've got a group over here. I'm not sure. Are you okay with working in a group with other people? Yep. Okay. There we are. Okay. We've only got 5 people over here. You might want to come over here. Are you okay working with other people, or do you want to just sit here by yourself? Of course, whatever works for you. Yes? No, there's no issues. I just realized these 2 groups are nice and they're sort of here, but you're kind of far away. I'm sure you're all lovely people. If you could come this way, then it's going to make life really good, because we're going to have conversations between each other. So maybe you could gather together here, and you feel free to put the chairs around like this. There we go. Excellent. Thank you. One of the great things about learning and development people is you put them together and it's like a train. They're off and talking, and then you have to try to put the brakes on the train and then start it again. Very quickly, I'm just going to describe what we're going to be doing, and then, I want you to start speaking again if possible. So the aim for me, welcome, come in, willkommen, bienvenue, hoş geldiniz. We're talking in groups, so if you'd like to join this group here, that would be great. Thank you so much. We've got the aim in this hour and a quarter is to have a conversation about what are the challenges for this year, and to try to find in a group ways of tackling them. As well as that, I want to ask some people from the audience to stand up and give their views on things. We've got Wolfgang Hennen here, who's going to be our first person. I call an expert witness. Now, in English law, an expert witness is somebody who comes into the court and who knows about something. Now, in Wolfgang's case, he was board director at Lidl. Now he runs his own consultancy, but he was a board director at Lidl, so in charge of learning. Yeah? So he knows a lot about some of the things which we're going to be debating. Later on, I'm going to ask somebody else to be an expert witness. If you feel like you've got something good to add, that's great. I am a believer in expertise. I think we all have something to share. So at some point, if I say to you, who wants to stand up and do a Wolfgang, then I'd like you to stand up and just share your thoughts about something, if that's okay. And if you don't want to, we're all here to support each other. So there's no pressure. So the first thing I'd like everyone to do is just obviously get to know each other, but I'd like you to answer this question if possible. In your groups, what's your biggest challenge in L&D? I'm just checking I'd written in L&D. If you want to talk about your personal challenges, that's fine, but it's really about L&D, is why we're here. So just share that, and what I'd like to do is get a sense in the group of what are the challenges, where is there the same sort of challenge between organizations, and what are the barriers to success? So what is it you're trying to do? What's stopping that happening? And where is there some common ground between the people in the group? Do you all find there's a technical issue? Do you all find there's a cultural issue, for example? Okay? Obviously, at the end of this, we've got 3 groups. It would be great to have one person from each group stand up and summarize in a couple of minutes what you're talking about. So be prepared for somebody in the group to do that, please. Welcome. We're all in different groups. Take a moment. Well, if you want to join a group now, that's great. Oh, thank you. Okay, right. This is the question. Over to you. We're going to run this for like 5-10 minutes, really get to the bottom. What are your challenges, and where do you have common ground with other people in your groups? Go ahead. Are you ready to go with your top three? No, you're not ready to go, are you? Okay, I'm going to ask for top threes from each of our groups. It's been a really interesting discussion to listen to. Each of the discussions have been. We're counting off the three here. You've got three here? And do you have a speaker as well? Someone's been volunteered. You have three. Okay. And you have three and a speaker? Brilliant. Okay. Would you like to go first?
We talked about mindset. It's very difficult to change the mindset, and we don't want to go back.
Sorry, Alfred, can I ask you, sorry, firstly, yeah, stand up, that's great. Also, and I don't think we need a microphone. I think, can everyone hear okay? Just want to be clear. Okay, and can you say where you're from? And not the Netherlands, but your organization. And finally, when you say mindset, whose mindset? Right, let's go back to the beginning. Who do you work with, Alfred?
Yeah, my company is called Expertise. I help organizations with moving into workflow learning. And when I talk about mindset, it's the mindset of the learning department. You know,
Actually, sorry, we are going to need the microphone because we're streaming, and so we're going to need to pick it up. Sorry. Sorry, everybody watching on the live stream, it's terrible. You know, I've been doing online stuff for 15 years, and I always forget that they need to hear stuff too. Sorry. Thank you very much. So Alfred is working at Expertise. You help with workflow learning, and you're based in the Netherlands. And the top three things began with mindset, but whose mindset?
It's the mindset of the learner itself. One of our colleagues was talking about that it was difficult to get the people back to the classroom. They want to stay home, they want to stay virtual. They don't want to go back to the classroom. But it's also the mindset of the learning people, the people that were always used to creating beautiful e-learning and great classrooms. How do we do things really different? You know, bringing things from a class to a virtual class. Is that really that innovative? How do we do that? Culture was a big thing. Mindset was a big thing. Not going back to the same things that we have always done. So how do we really do things different moving forward? And how do we convince? In my opinion, it's mostly the learning people that are very traditional. The business is also asking for new solutions. We don't have time to send everybody to the classroom over and over again. But the learning people are so used to doing it in classroom and e-learning. That's in my opinion.
Nice summary, thank you. Don't go away for a second.
Something, guys?
I just want to check, does this make sense? Does this resonate? Got some nodding heads here? Yeah, okay. Does anybody disagree with anything? No? Okay, I think there's a fair amount of commonality. That's great. Alfred, thank you very much. Do you want to swap over the microphones and we get this one disinfected? Thanks. So who from this group? Thank you. And as Alfred did, thank you, Alfred. Could you say who you are, where you're from?
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Irina Matthews. I work for the company called Giant that provides the connectivity and technology solutions for science and research in Europe. And I represent the learning and development team. So in our group, we discussed a number of things and identified some common challenges. And one of them is that our experience, recent experience as L&D professionals has been around the fact that we implemented quick changes and quick fixes,
Yep.
which were shortcuts to address the challenges of change that happened very quickly and kind of have the effect of felt being imposed on us and we were forced down this route. So the challenge for L&D professionals, as we see it, is to be able to take a step back. We now feel that it's time to reflect more. And if we are in a situation when we feel pressure on us, to be able to stand back and say no. Yeah, we need more time, we need to reflect, we need to think, and we need to be able to offer you a better solution than a quick fix. Linked to that, and that kind of resonates with the first group, is the change of the mindset. And the change of the mindset for everyone, for learners, for L&D professionals, and for organization and people, decision makers in this organization. Because although the reality presents us with new reality, there is a certain degree of avoidance to accept that this is not a short term. Yeah, it's something has happened which will stay with us for longer.
Right.
And therefore we do need time to reflect. And the mindset need to change for all of us, to understand what has changed, to make sense of this reality and see what to do next and how to do it right. And the third challenge, having thought of all this and reflected on this, which I shared with you, is to actually, it's become more important to connect to people and feeling connected with organizations. So the focus seems to be, should be, on maintaining that sense of connectedness and coherence and alignment within the organization. So people engage with what the organization values and priorities are and with each other. And therefore, the focus seems to be shifting, in our opinion, from process-driven L&D to more user-centered, person-centered L&D, and whether that will translate in the format of delivery of professional development, like coaching and mentoring. We've done it this year, and we know that with all the deficiencies of online environment, it does work, right? Whether we introduced a new set of skills, like resilience building skills, whether we approach the suppliers of training solutions and tell them, listen, that's the work you did is great, but now we need X, Y, and Z. Yeah. So how it will manifest itself, this new approach, is different, diverse, and at the moment hard to predict and say something for definite.
That's really comprehensive. Thank you. I love the overlap. I'm just going to go back here so we can get on the streaming camera. The overlap with the mindset. I think I could have guessed that might be coming, but it's really interesting to hear it expressed like that so well. And I think that well, I'm going to reflect myself on the quick changes from COVID-19 and what we do about it, which again reflects your final point. We don't want to go back, but maybe not all the stuff we did changing going forward was right either. So there's something there. I've got something to share about that in a minute. Any reactions? Any thoughts? Sorry, I missed your name again. Sorry. Irina. Okay. So any thoughts on Irina and that group? Anything you want to share? We're all desperate to hear what Group 3 has to say. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm Geraldine Voos, and Global Learning and Development Manager at Bronkhorst High-Tech in the Netherlands. And we had some very similar challenges within our organizations. One of them was working with stakeholders. Sometimes they know and see that it's important what you're trying to do as learning and development, but it's still very hard to get them to free up time to actually work with you on what you're trying to do. The other challenge we had is we've now had to go online in various ways. And how do we keep our programs that we are creating engaging? so that people don't get overwhelmed and bored by the online offerings. And the third one is same as the other two groups had, mindset. And it's both the mindset within the learning and development department, who are, like Alfred was saying, stuck on classroom training, and still want to continue doing that. And also actually the learners, the mindset of the learners, because they too often still have a preference to go to a classroom and learn that way.
Brilliant, thank you. Really concise, nicely expressed. Any reaction to Geraldine? Yes, Idina. You've got a microphone? There we are.
It's something about preference for classroom-based training.
Yeah.
Yes, there is a tendency, sort of sense of inertia among L&D professionals, that we still need to send people on a course, and it has to be in a classroom. However, from learners' experience perspective, and everyone, if you remember, not so long ago when we did evaluations of the training, it is to my experience, people always commented of the benefits of the classroom-based training, the social element, that they come and meet each other, and the most useful conversations they have is around a cup of coffee in lunchtime, right? Yep. So that hankering for classroom-based training, it's not just because L&D professionals are used to it. I think it comes from that level of missing social element and social interaction. And this is the form to re-engage with each other through classroom-based training.
And to be fair, maybe there's a hankering for that social engagement. People are really wanting it after we've had so long in lockdown. I mean, this morning when I said, it's good to be back, I wasn't expecting it, but there was this round of applause. Yeah, it's good to be back. Now, not everybody feels the same way, but plenty of people do feel that it is good to be being back socially again. It's part of who we are as human beings. I'm going to come to Wolfgang in a second. I just want to quickly reflect on this business of, we made changes very quickly around April 2012, typically, 2020. I think of this as being a three-phase thing. Firstly, we had to adapt to the new shock. You just had to adapt stuff and get it done. And some organizations were halfway there. Some, they had to go from 0 to 100% doing everything online. At some point in the future, we're looking forward to a sense where we advance forward with a new way of doing things. But the emergency measures put in place in the adapt phase are never going to be suitable, all of them, for the advance phase. What you expressed, Irene, is so well, it's what I call in the middle the adopt phase. We have to consciously, as you said, sit back, reflect, and take the time to think about what we're going to adopt. Because the last time this happened was 9/11, when all travel in the States was stopped. People couldn't travel to courses. E-learning suddenly took a huge uptick. But what was it? Largely in 2001, it was people putting PowerPoints online with the click next button on. It really was bad, and there was not much done to adjust that afterwards. So it was an immediate reaction. That was fine. But there was no adopt phase afterwards where people said, well, okay, that doesn't really work. We need to do a better job. Well, it did come, but it came a long time later. So I think there's an absolute need for us as a profession to be really conscious about what do we do next? And that's what we're here discussing. Wolfgang, you're our expert witness. I threw you into this. I said, look, I don't know what's going to come out of this discussion, but you've got a great experience of doing great stuff at Lidl. Do you want to talk about, for example, how the mindset, because we had mindset in each group, how the mindset at Lidl was bent towards learning? Because you had a very good learning culture, from what I understand. Do you want to talk about that for a couple of minutes, and we could just have a discussion around it? Because I think if we can get to the bottom of the mindset thing, I think that's going to help everybody.
Mm-hmm. Can I say here, or?
Yeah. You're on camera, so you're good, yeah.
Okay, fine. So, my name is Wolfgang. I worked for Lidl 15 years, and not only when I talk to Don, I notice that within this company there's a learning culture which most of us within the company are not aware of. Because it's so normal, it's so part of our culture that we don't even question it. I was promoted to be a board member, to be a CFO in Belgium in 2008. And just to give you an idea, the first thing the company did was to send me to training. But not a training you might imagine. They sent me 9 months abroad. So in this 9 months, I was in nearly all the functions of the company. I was in the stores working as a mail clerk. I was in the warehouse.
So you were promoted to a board position
Yes.
and they sent you to be a mail clerk?
Yeah.
Okay.
But they paid me on the board level, so that was okay. So, then I went to the Netherlands with two aims in my learning. First, the language, because in Belgium part of the country speaks Dutch. But I was in every and each department I wanted to. And I could talk and ask all the silly questions without ever thinking I will be their CFO in a couple of months. No, I was completely free asking everything I wanted. After that, 2 months with my colleague CFO at Lidl Ireland, and I was his shadow. Yeah, we started the day together with a coffee, and I followed him everywhere he went, so I could see what is the daily life of a CFO at Lidl like, and what does he do, and how does he interact with board members, with other directors, and so on. So 9 months being paid, and then I came to my position, to Belgium. Most of us will say, Lidl, that's a discounter, hard on costs, efficiency. How can they afford this kind of training? I would put it other way around. We cannot afford not to train our people. There is a price on this training. From day one, in my function as CFO and board member in Lidl Belgium, I was up and running. I had all the responsibility, I had the entire accountability, because I knew exactly what the job is about. And what they did for me, they did for the entire company. Every time somebody steps in, every time somebody is promoted, he gets all the time he needs to be on level, and it is defended even in the crisis. I told to you last year, even in the crisis, everybody said, no, don't jeopardize the training, because we cannot afford people playing around in their new function, not knowing what they are doing. So for Lidl people, it's just a norm. It's part of the culture. Never would a CFO or a CEO make compromises on the learning. However, the company had the same challenges we were talking about, because the situation of learning and following somebody is very difficult if you're not allowed to have close contacts. So we had the technology challenges to say, how do we cope with that? But however, that was a deep in the organization melted culture of learning.
That's a really good summary. And you can understand that when I talked with Wolfgang about this last year, I said to him, you don't understand what an extraordinary learning culture you've got, because this is unlike most organizations that I converse with. It got that way because the founders built that into how Lidl works. Have you had, because you're now a consultant, do you have any sense of how you can persuade other companies to get towards that? Presumably, it needs buy-in from the very top. And we're not talking here about courses and the L&D department. We're talking about the entire organization having an open attitude to learning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it came with this company. It's not only Lidl, it's Kaufland, it's the entire Schwarz Group. It came because in the beginning they did not really question themselves. It was a very practical way of training people. Yeah. So it came very late, after 20 or 30 years, that we had a learning and development department. It was just done. Yeah. You go over there and then you see how it's done, and then you come to your function. So how to introduce that to companies? Being an ex-CFO, I would always crunch the numbers and say, just imagine what this guy in your company or this guy in your board will cost, because he makes bad decisions, because he's training in his function. And then we start taking assumptions with the client together, and they say, oh, that's really risky to have somebody in this function without knowing what he's doing. Right. Yeah. And then you said, okay, that's the risk. That's what it surely would cost, because he's not efficient. He will spend half of his time asking questions to everybody. How do we do that? And then you have a huge amount of money, which is costly because people are not trained. And then you put your R&D budget towards it and said, oh, perhaps it's worth.
Spending this money and this time. I love this story about how Lidl does this. I'm still not sure if it's possible to inject that sort of culture into something else. I'd love to see it happen. But anyway, do we have any questions for our expert witness, Wolfgang? Go ahead. Oh, sorry, wait for the mic, please, sorry.
I have more a reflection than a question, and that goes back to what we discussed yesterday about reskilling and upskilling, that even when you are longer in a corporate environment, that it's always required to get in other people's shoes and understand what they are doing in order to build up further power skills, so the soft skills, power skills. And I think that we shouldn't only focus on those that are coming in the company, but those that are very long time there, and somehow they are forgive me if I say it like that, lost in the processes,
Yeah, absolutely.
that they forget to upskill their creativity, their
Let's ask Wolfgang. I mean, you were in a privileged position, but did everybody? Did somebody working in the bakery, did they have their skills maintained?
And
did they have opportunity to grow?
And here comes culture. Because if you join a company and the first thing they do is they train you by following somebody, yeah, what you learn from day one in the culture is we transfer our knowledge. Yeah, we have a knowledge sharing culture, and you don't think about it. So you're 5 years with the company and you've forgotten what. Just going to ask my buddy, yeah, or calling somebody. It's part of how, and that answers perhaps also the question how to introduce that in a company. I very much like the idea of social learning. Yeah, Bram, you brought the example for what is the best way to learn how to decalc. How do you say it? Yeah, descale in an espresso machine. Yeah, you put a QR code on the machine when you need it, and you post it. Same thing, you can build up in a company a social media platform. I'm here with this tool. Does anybody know how it works? And then you have posts helping you. Yeah, I know. Just let's connect. I can explain you. Helping people to help each other. Yeah, and to give incentives. Yeah, to share your knowledge.
Wherever you have platforms like that, you don't actually need financial or other incentives to do it. Typically, people do it because they like doing it and they like to be seen as experts and like to help. But I think there's still the question, isn't there? I think the culture comes first, and then the sharing, people are being upskilled. I think doing it the other way around, it wouldn't happen by itself. Stella, you had a question. Thank you. Yeah, the mic's just there.
I'm just very curious, and I think you've sort of talked about it, Don, but how you could actually persuade other organizations to really change, to have that sort of culture where it is you just come in, the senior person with, all this kind of experience from a previous job, they're bringing it with them, but no, you're going to go onto the shop floor. I'm really curious as to how you can overcome some of that ego problem that may or may not exist.
And this happens a little, doesn't it? I mean, the senior people do.
They do. They do.
It
is independent of what level you join the company. You first go on the floor store and on the store of the floor, and you start working. Yeah, you're at the checkout and you're creating a huge queue, of course. But anyway, you learn exactly, and the company is proud that even the CEO knows exactly what the mail clerk and the colleague in the store is doing. Yeah, and this make better decisions. Yeah, and how you can bring this into other countries, other companies. What I do first is tell me your problems you have with trainings, with knowledge, with skills, and so on. Yeah, and then they bring me all this kind of issues and challenges they have, and you can answer most of the questions by introducing this kind of models. And you said a very, very nice thing: social learning. It not only helps the person who needs the knowledge, it also gives a lot of appreciation to the old guys who are in the companies and who love sharing their knowledge. Yeah. So, and it connects diversity. You have the youngsters coming in and the older workforce, and they get connected. So, yeah, it really
Alfred, you waved at me when Wolfgang said old guys. Was that because you think I'm an old guy or because you have a question? Can we get a microphone to... There we go.
I like the whole statement around social learning, but you described two aspects of social learning. The first aspect was going to that video that our friend was describing when working with the coffee machine, which is, in my opinion, a performance support aspect and less social learning because you're not reaching out to the expert. Reaching out to the expert, in my opinion, is part of a model, but it's also a difficult model because it's a very expensive model. I have worked with IBM in the early 2000s, and they started with same time, and they had access to 300,000 experts in the organization. And the problem was that some people always got the same questions back, and they turned it off, and they didn't comment anymore. So what you need is a system where those answers are stored in learning nuggets so that the first answer is a learning nugget, like that video, where you go if you want to solve a problem, and then the expert is line defense number 3 or 4, but not the immediate person to go to, because it's too expensive to go all the time to that same expert, and they are turning it off.
It's a really good point. And you know, sorry, but did you have a question? Okay, let's bring the mic over to Louise, please. Yeah, I think this is a huge, huge issue. Most of the stuff we do in L&D is about creating courses. But that's not how most learning takes place. It takes place through knowledge sharing. And the bit that makes the difference in most organizations is the tacit knowledge that sits in people's heads that is the real secret source of the organization. It's where the difference lies. And because it's trapped in people's heads, it's difficult to get it out. What we're describing is systems that will make it happen. And of course, it's not easy. If it was easy, everyone would do it. But if you do it and get it right, then you've got a differentiator. And I think the IBM, it's a really good example. And I think the trick is to find a way to surface the tacit knowledge in a way that's going to work, keeps the people who provide it satisfied. And in IBM, you have the skills, or you have the profession structure, so people can be very highly rated in their profession in IBM, and part of that, for example, could be fed by the fact that they are a contributor to the knowledge base. This is a hobby horse of mine, as you can tell. Louise, do you want to give your question?
Just a short reflection of that, because I just can bring the image of a company where this learning culture is really embedded. What happened if somebody was sent to a training or to somebody else to train? You ask if you go to the my colleague needs some training in the accounting department. You call the head of accounting department and said he needs some training. Can I give me your best man or your best woman, your best guy you have in accounting? So it was a very high, not a bonus, but it was very, very valuating for you to be seen as somebody who can transfer, So you put really a flag on this one. So he is so good, he can transfer his knowledge. So it was the first step for the next promotion. So that was, I strongly believe that if you want to have something in your company, you have to put some reward. Thank you. Sorry, some reward on it.
And thank you for. By the way, thank everybody for doing this in a language that isn't your own. I mean, it's ridiculous. I couldn't do this in any language, so thank you very much. I once said good morning to a group in the Netherlands. I said, Goedemorgen. I was quite pleased with myself. And they said, very good, Donald. And I said, yeah, that's my vocabulary, 2 words. They said, no, Donald. Goedemorgen is 1 word in Dutch. So they cut my vocabulary in half. Louise.
Going back to this point about the social aspects of learning, and I suppose how do you think tech and digital tools can support the social aspects of learning in L&D as we go forward? And I suppose, is there a role for social aspects of social media in a kind of more corporate training environment?
It happened quite naturally. We first saw it on the store floor before we tried to introduce it. So what happened was that some colleagues in our company started to build their own WhatsApp groups, their own Facebook groups, sharing their knowledge with each other. And then we had in the learning and development department, we had the idea from, wow, that's a good idea. Let's put that on national level, of international level. So it came bottom up. It came automatically.
I think it's a really good point. And we've got the combination of social platforms, user-generated content, which is, or it could be other forms of performance support. Performance support can come from different places. But again, none of this is about learning development department creating courses. I can't believe it, we've got 15 minutes left. I've enjoyed listening and talking so much. And I could chat with Wolfgang all day because I just find there's so much here I want to learn. But I'm going to say, can you sit down? Thank you very much, Wolfgang. Let's give a quick round of applause. And I'm going to ask you in groups because we've talked about problems, which is lovely. You know, it's the basic of gossip, isn't it? Your problems, other people's problems, it's great. But I think we now need to find solutions. What I'd like to do in a group is just spend 10 minutes looking at one of the issues that came up and just think, okay, what are we going to do about it? What can we change in an organization or in how we work to tackle that? We're not going to find the answer in 10 minutes, all right? Let's be quite clear. But we can start down the road. And above all, I hope you're going to make some friends and you'll say, well, okay, maybe we can't solve it now, but let's continue to stay in touch and keep the conversation going. So did I press that or that's bizarre. Magic. Please tackle one of your group's challenges, and yeah, we're going to do a very quick bit of feedback at the end, like 30 seconds. We're going to tackle it by whatever. All right, please go. conversations, but you know, I also run conferences and everything has to finish on time, and it's nearly 1:15. Thank you for coming along. Thank you for sharing all these conversations. Every time I listen to people who know what they're talking about and sharing real-world problems in groups like this, I remember it's not just about people on stage doing stuff. These conversations have been really useful. Thank you. Who would like to stand up and, you know, I asked you, could you tackle one of the problems in your group? Maybe you didn't do that. Maybe you discussed something else. I'm looking at this group here. Does somebody want to stand up and share anything you got out of that last discussion? Go on, Wolfgang. Go on. Go on. We'll come you need a microphone? You need a microphone? Oh, no, he's got a microphone. What am I talking about? Sorry. Okay.
One of the things we discussed is how to convince the top of the organization of implementing whatever, and we said making up a business case, measuring the impact, really showing what a training is worth and what it brings to the organization. Yeah, it's not training for the sake of training, it's training to bring some added value to the organization and to show that in the business case when you ask for an additional training or another training or a new technology.
And you're convinced that I know it's possible to do it theoretically, you're convinced you can do it in practice?
Absolutely. I did it several times, so yeah.
Okay. Do you need to have the skills of a chief financial officer to do it?
No. No, you need one guy who is perhaps a little bit educated in how a CFO is talking. Right. You need the vocabulary and you need how to make up a business case. But just the mindset, yeah, nobody expects from an L&D person to have a perfect business case worked out. But to have a mindset to think about what is this bringing to our performance in the organization. Okay. That's enough.
That's great. Thank you so much. I mean, my observation is that you can usually do this if you can find the right person to talk to. If you find the right first manager, leader, executive to speak to and you persuade them, the second one is much easier. So you've got to tackle the right first person. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Yes. I'll come up here. My name is Brian. I'm from Denmark. And what we discussed over here, one of the challenges that we see right now is that how can we keep people being engaged in the learning activities, and how can we keep people being engaged? And one of the things is that we have to engage them during the activities. Right. And people are tired right now, sitting back home in the kitchen, in the living room, in the basement, in front of the screen. So one of the ideas is to think out of the box, do something different. Complete different. So one of the suggestions is that we have hired friends and the musicians playing for all the employees for 1 hour, just in order to boost the morale. We have done something for the kids, for our kids, hired a guy who can make some fun with the kids in front of the screens. So do something different, boost the morale. And people will go back on Monday with a smile on the face and say, well, I'm happy to be here. Think out of the box, do something different, engage people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. When I'm doing an event, whether it's online or face-to-face, I always think the first 3 minutes are crucial. Now, this morning when I kicked off the conference, hi, Don Taylor! I sound quite sort of, he's Don, he's doing his theatre bit. I couldn't sleep last night. I was going over and over in my head what those first 3 minutes were going to be, because they've got to be right. If you get it wrong, I've set the wrong tone for the whole event. And I think, maybe you're doing a webinar for 1 hour, whatever, but I think taking that focus on setting the right tone right at the beginning is absolutely crucial. By the way, after this, in my diary, I've got a little note saying sleep from 1:30 onwards. Final group here. What's our challenge, and what are we going to do? Oh, it doesn't have to be a challenge. It could be any observation at all in your discussion. So it's all right. It's all right.
Hey, that's working. Well, we're far away from getting complete here. It looks like we have to continue at lunch. So let's see how far we get there. But in fact we have to say we are not experts neither. Even we are L&D professionals. It doesn't mean that we have the conclusion for everything. And we have to be clear on that. And so really getting into the business and speak to people openly about what we can do. Especially we were talking about your case, Wolfgang. We think it's really interesting. We don't know if it's possible for every area, but even so, we don't really know what it is that a person has to learn. And the learner, neither. So it might be that nobody has a conclusion, but sometimes it's kind of a guess. So we're still there. We're still in discussion.
I love this idea of field work. It's so important in L&D. I always talk about L&D being in its box and needing to get out and talk to L&D outside the business, needing to talk to people in the business outside L&D, and needing to keep an eye on the world outside the business and outside L&D. We've got to do the field work. We've got to see what's going on. Otherwise, we are stuck in what I call the training ghetto, just doing the same thing again and again and again.
It's going back to the same challenges we actually were discussing, right? We were saying we're talking too less to the people. I mean, it's called human resources, but we are focusing more on resources than on the human factor sometimes. So I think here it is where we can start to be more observative.
To regain the humanity, maybe. What a great note to leave on. Listen, you've been fabulous to listen to. I've learned a lot today. I hope it's been useful and it's kicked off some thoughts in your minds. Give yourselves a big round of applause, please. All right. Actually, I'm going to lunch now because while we were chatting and WhatsApp came up, I need to go and talk to somebody. So I'm going to have some lunch, then I'm going to go to sleep. I heartily recommend getting some lunch and enjoying the rest of the conference. Thank you so much, everyone.